do we think we ought to wait for Adrian, or should we just press on regardless?
I think we should press on. There's a lot of people here. There might be a lot of questions.
Yep.
Why don't you get started, Brad?
Okay. That's the plan. My name is Brad Waite. Yeah, I'm the president of Sustainable Rossmoor, and Barry Bryan, our vice president, is also here. And I'm betting that we'll be joined also by Adrian Byram, who is Sustainable Rossmoor's the chair of our Renewable Energy Committee, and he's the mastermind behind all the work that we've been doing and he's been doing on the shared solar concept for the last year. So this is going to be a Q&A session. At this point, we're assuming that all of you have some hopefully meaningful degree of interest in pursuing solar, and that you've also gotten a quote from Adrian that had at least two options on it. If you did not, if that's not the case, then you should get a hold of him, and we can give you his email address, and he will collect the information he needs to.
Or put your name in the chat that you didn't get it, and we'll make sure that he gets out the quote to you. So far, 3 people out of 340, 3 people that we know about did not get the original quote.
Okay, and so then to ask your questions, you've got 2 methods. The preferred method is to put it in the chat stream, because that way, if we, for some reason, we don't get a chance to answer it live during this session, we will answer it and send out to everybody. The other option is to electronically raise your hand and we'll call on you. And in case you don't know, the way you do that is to, wherever your Zoom control panel is, mine's down the bottom of my screen. There's an icon called reactions. You click on that and there's a raise hand feature. Okay. So with that said, since no one has jumped on and raised their hand yet, let's go. Go ahead.
Yeah, we do have a question on the chat.
Right.
Question from Bill and Marielle. Excuse me if I mispronounce names. Snyder.
That's right on.
Okay. How long is the 26% rebate available? It should be available for probably for a few years. It was increased. And there's further legislation about bringing back the 30%, and this would be an actual refund rather than a tax credit, so that even if you did not pay, even if you had a low income and didn't have much in the way of taxes, you'd be able to get the full 30%, but that has not been passed yet, and we don't know if it will be. Question number 2. There's been articles about people sinking money into solar only to find PG&E not having the infrastructure to buy back their extra power. We forwarded that question to our electrical engineers at Rossmoor, and they assured us that that is not the case here at Rossmoor. We have over 266 people all over Rossmoor who have gotten solar and have not had this difficulty at all. And the electrical engineers assure us that that is not a problem here at Rossmoor.
Richard Coleman's got his hand up. Richard, why don't you unmute yourself and then ask your question,
Wait.
please?
Oh, there were 2 other parts of that question there.
I put one of my questions on share, but I have several. On my quote, it showed a shared carport installation plus 2 individual, like I said, type of installation individual. I was curious why the shared carport installation was more expensive than the individual. I sort of had the impression that a shared installation would be less expensive.
Can you remind me, Richard, which project you're in, or
Mutual 8.
Mutual Aid? Yes. Okay. So the cost of the shared installations does involve trenching and does involve bringing in additional electrical service to that particular carport. And that tends to increase the cost somewhat because those are costs that are not incurred if you're doing it on your individual building.
Okay.
Now, in the case of Mutual Aid, we have rather good carport there in front off your second entry in off Skycrest. I would want to have Solar Tech actually quote that and take a look at it from an engineering viewpoint and see what the cost really is. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't misleading anybody, so I kind of cranked up the estimates on the trenching and electrical service costs. So it might be a little less, I don't know. But it's going to run up about the same. But the big advantage is it's not on your residential building.
Right.
You know, if there's any leak problems or anything like that, it's not going to be a problem.
And a couple of related questions.
Muted.
I compared the cost of what was on this option to what one of our members did individually about 3 years ago. And the increased cost seems to be about 33 to 50% higher, if I'm figuring that right. And you may not have any idea why that is, but I was just curious if you had any thoughts about that. That seemed like a huge increase.
Yes, he does.
So there's a couple of things that you need to be careful that you're comparing apples and apples, because there's really two costs that people sort of keep in mind. One is the cost for the contract. And then the one that really matters to you is the cost after the 26% tax credit. So for example, in my case, I paid $13,000 and then to my installer, but then I got $3,000 back. So I actually paid $10,000. Okay. So there's that issue. But then there has actually been an increase in the costs.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm comparing apples to apples, and it still seems, even with inflation, to be a pretty high increase.
Yeah. So there's two things here. One is that the cost of PV has gone up quite a bit since last year. I installed my system about a year and a half ago, not quite a year and a half ago, and today that would cost me about 15% more, 20% more. And part of the reason is the cost of panels has gone up. And the reason for that is that until Mr. Biden became president, we were letting everybody send panels into the US, particularly from China. And the Biden administration sort of put a stop to many of the panels coming in from China because of the fact that they were using Uyghurs labor and under sort of enslaved conditions almost. And so as a result, the US manufacturers have been able to increase their prices, and they've done so. And these are all US made panels. That's number one. Number two, we are, because of the fact that we have limited roof space, we asked the vendors to use the most high-powered panels that they had available so that we were using less roof space per watt. And so those panels cost a bit more typically than the least expensive ones. So that's added to the cost. And I think right now, there's a bit of a crunch on to get these things done. People have had years to do this and they haven't, and we're down to the wire. And so there's probably a little bit of extra cost associated with that. But
A couple more
other reasons.
A couple more questions, if I can. I have heard previously that it was too late to do an individual installation. Is that still the case, that it is too late, or is that actually possible still to do?
So right now, if you do a large shared installation, which would be about 6 or 8 people in houses like yours, Richard. If you were to do a large installation of over 30 kilowatts, so the total size of the system is over 30 kilowatts, then you operate under a different tariff, and you are guaranteed under that tariff, so long as you get the application in before middle of December, that you will get the NEM2. If you are not over that limit, even if it's a shared solution or an individual one, then the PUC could deny the ability to give you an installation at this time, an individual installation. We have heard from some people that are well connected in this, that in fact, the PUC has agreed that they will grandfather in everybody who has an interconnect application in place by the middle of December. But we don't know that. We can't, that's not writing anywhere. That's not a firm commitment. So we have negotiated with the installers that they will put a clause that allows us to escape the contract if indeed when the PUC finally makes its decision, if it turns out that they won't allow NEM2. If you would not get NEM2, you can escape, but it will cost $500 because at that point the installer will have paid a fee to PG&E, $200 to make the interconnect application. They will have done a fair amount of engineering work, etc. So to recover their costs, it will cost $500, but they've guaranteed that it will not exceed that. So
just to restate what I think I'm hearing you saying, if you do a group shared solar installation at that certain level above 30 kilowatt hours, 6 to 8 people, you will be assured of an NEM2 rate.
right.
Do it individually, it's possible, likely, some uncertainty about whether that will be honored if you get the agreement in time. Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Your understanding is correct, Richard.
Okay. I have some other questions, but I'll let other people go.
Yeah, and before you do that, let me make a quick comment. I've gotten 2 requests from people for me to enable live transcript. And while I think that technology is wonderful, I would love to do that. Both Barry and I have found when we run that on our computer, since we're the host of it, after a certain amount of time, it freezes our system, our Zoom session, and basically we become semi-useless. So, so we can, both of us have said, nope, we can't do that anymore until Zoom cleans up that act.
Well,
Okay.
We are recording it, and we will be sending out a link that you can view it.
Once you do record it, you can the closed captionings will be available in the Zoom recording after a few days.
Even if we don't have it enabled?
You don't need live transcripts to get a English closed captioning, and you can create after the fact subtitles in different languages as well. That can be done in YouTube Studio with the Zoom after the Zoom is uploaded to a YouTube.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you and Barry work on that.
Yeah, Harris, thank you. If Harris says it, I'm sure it's true, and we'll work on that.
Yeah, I can help you do that after the fact.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Angela, you want?
Yes. My question is, I'm the only person in my building who has expressed an interest. And so my choices are go it individually. And then it says the alternative is to get other people in the project. How would that work? Go in
So
with the
there,
project.
remind me of which project you're in, Angela.
Your entry, Adrian. I think that's 51.
Oh, you're in project 51, yes. So there's, drawing a blank on the number now, doesn't matter. There's one building where there's quite a few people, and they could put in a shared system on the roof of the building. And if you wanted to, you could work with them, or not. Well, you could all work together. If they were wanting to do shared, you could camp onto that roof and do a shared system. Otherwise, you would have to do an individual system. Yeah.
So some wire goes from my meter over to wherever they
No,
are?
no, it's all done. It's really an accounting mechanism
I see.
when we do shared. What's happening is all the shared panels are pushing electricity to PG&E. PG&E's counting all that electricity, generating credits, and then at the end of the month, distributing the credits to your account and to everybody else's.
My other question was, at some time during this session, are you going to talk about financing options?
Probably not. We'll send out something about financing options in a day or two. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
I have to step out for just a moment.
All right, Harris, you want
to? Yeah, I got a quote, and it talks about the panels on our building, and it gives a range from a different number of panels. What in our case, I'm in Mutual 3 and Project 37, and one thing that I didn't quite catch was if in the future I decide that I want to have electric charging for a car in my garage, is there a difference in what is the additional cost to make sure that the electric in the garage is up to snuff to handle charging if we put the panels on top of the individual carport instead of on the roof itself?
And that is obviously a good question. I can give you a guesstimate of the cost, in that case, because that's what I did. I live in Mutual 3 Project 27, and in a condo that has an attached carport. And when I bought my EV, 3.5 years ago, I had an electrician run a 240 volt, 20 amp circuit from my panel into the carport. And at that time, it was about, $1,500 for the electrician's work. Plus, you got to buy the charging station. Obviously, I'm betting that, the electrician's rates have gone up since then. So, but again, so it's a different story if you've got an attached carport or garage versus a detached carport or garage.
Mine is attached.
Right.
Well, it's not attached to the house, but it's part of the same continuous roof structure.
Right.
And so
same as mine.
Do you need to do something now when they put in the solar panels, or can that other wiring be done later when and if I get an all electric car?
Actually, they're two separate things. And now, are we talking about an individual solar system or shared?
Shared.
Okay, and then shared, there's no real impact, to your EV charging, with the shared system, because again, as Adrian, alluded to, when they put up a shared system, all the electricity generated by the panels in that shared system run into one brand new meter whose only function is to keep track of the electricity that's pumped back into the grid, so the PG&E can calculate how much of that electricity should be credited to which participant in that shared system. And so there's no interface between that shared system and your individual manor, your individual meter. And so there's no, I don't think there's any way to run the EV, to charge your EV with the electricity from the shared system. But again, we'll save you some money.
What about an individual situation?
Individual situation, that's different, because in an individual situation, the panels that are put on your roof, are wired into your meter. And so when the electricity is, when the panels are generating electricity, which obviously they don't do at night, but when they are, they will push that electricity into your manor whenever you have the need for it. That is what they call a load, right? If you're using electricity in your manor, if the first way to get that is from your solar panels, if you still don't have enough production from the panels, you'll pull it from the PG&E grid. So in that case, you would benefit Harris if you put panels up enough to accommodate an EV, and then it'll help power your EV.
To continue my question on the shared, up until today, I thought that we had at least 3 people in our 6-unit building that were planning to go ahead with shared, and I just heard a little while ago that one of those 3 has decided not to go ahead. If we've only got 2 in our 6-unit building, is that enough to do shared?
Probably not. There's a minimum of 14 kilowatts, which would be, how many panels? 14 enter 0.42 divide 33 panels. And before, so they won't do it unless it's 14 panels or 33 panels. And that you're probably not there. So the alternative, and a reasonable one, is that somebody in a building by themselves may wish to participate in a shared system, especially if your roof is particularly sunny. And they can do that now. Third Mutual, the board approved the revised solar policy that allows someone in another building to place their panels on a second building and use that location. So you should work with John Murphy, who's the person who's sort of being the detailed person for Mutuals 30 or for projects 36 and 37, and figure out if there's somebody else who might fit that category.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense.
Adrian, so project 37 has a lot of people, like 34 people or
Yeah.
something. So I would, isn't it a question of are there large roof or carports that they can go on? It can be any mixing and matching within that. It doesn't have to be specific to one address.
No, that's correct. So they can share. So if you go to, especially if you got a 6-unit building or an 8-unit building in 36 and 37, they have a lot of roof, and so there's opportunity to share that with somebody where there's only one person in the building.
Right.
Particularly if it's a shady building, they might want to participate with somebody who's in a different
To
building.
put more panels on our 6-unit building, if there's just 2 people here, do we need to have permission of the others to expand the number of panels?
No, so the change in the solar policy for Mutual 3 this applies only to mutual 3, but that's probably the majority of folks here, is that the board has approved a change in the policy that says a person in building A can participate in a shared solar system in building B, so long as they're within the same project. There are some rules about that, but it's not, you have to allow some space left on building, on the original of the building where the system is going. So you can't cover the roof of that building with panels. You have to allow some space for the people that are not participating to continue to participate, but not all of it. But you don't have to allow a proportional amount. And you do have to do notifications, but the notifications are, you don't have to get their permission, let's put it that way. You do have to notify.
Okay. I think we should move on to people who've raised their hands. We will, since there's a lot of people on this call, the people who have written in the chat, we will provide answers to you, but I want to make sure that the people who have questions, that we try to answer their questions in the order they've raised their hands. So why don't we go to Lou next?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Hi, Lou.
Hi, there's 3 questions having to do with pricing. 1, was the volume purchase agreement negotiated?
Yes.
And then what did that look like?
Looked like a volume purchase agreement.
Yeah.
Well, what's the timing?
It reduced the, it's hard to say because I don't know that the exact, what they're charging everybody else in all possible cases, but I do know that, for example, yes, went back to the manufacturer of the panels and got a discount from them of about 30 cents, and so about 10%, a little less than 10%, in addition to giving us their best price. So they've given us a 100-unit price.
Great, okay,
And I think ST has done the same.
okay. There's a couple follow-on about pricing. Given the fact that our electrical panels are old, was there a deal negotiated for upgrading the main panels of homes?
No.
Okay.
No.
Next question about pricing has to do with just the confirmation that this is the best pricing that they can offer and they cannot negotiate any further. Just a clarity on that.
Well, I guess I'm not in a position to say that it's the best pricing they can offer, but we went to them and said, okay, look, we've got a total of 300 and some odd people, 335 people who are interested in doing this, but we're asking you to make some special concessions, allow them an out if the solar policy isn't approved by their board, allow them an out if any M2 doesn't come through. Okay. So they've made those concessions. They've made some, they're working with us to try and get this thing done for everybody by the end of this month, so that indeed we can grandfather you under any M2. So they're doing a lot of work on that side of the fence to try and make this all happen. We agreed that we would, Sustainable Rossmoor, the people that are working on this, we would do a lot of work to try and organize it all, which is what we've been doing. Price, I'll say, has to some extent not been our primary concern. If you were really concerned about price, you should have done this 6 months ago.
Price performance, I think, is the key.
Yeah, the prices that they're offering are reasonable. They're within the sort of industry standard boundaries. For a large system, it's down around 370 a kilowatt hour, or a kilowatt, sorry. Sorry, $3.70 a watt for the system installed. A year ago, I paid $3.70 for a slightly smaller system, but then I got a hell of a deal. And so it's not unreasonable, but it's perhaps not the best deal that you could possibly have ever gotten. I'll say that.
I want to thank you and Brad and the team for doing such a great job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lou.
Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
Okay, Roger Bass, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Okay, thank you. And I want to second Lou's thanks to the team for putting this together. It's pretty impressive. A lot of work you've done. That doesn't mean I agree with everything you said. Number one question on page 8 of your document about shared administration. You have to have an agreement with your co-owners to each pay your fair share of these costs. Where does this agreement come from? Do you have a copy of such an agreement?
So it'll actually come from the MOD, the alteration agreement that MOD has involved. Now, are you in Mutual 3 or not?
Yeah, Project 45.
Okay, so the revised solar policy basically states that you agree to share the costs with your fellow owners.
And are there details of this agreement available, such as who pays for the insurance on the panels?
So you're
What is the
individual,
prorated? I'm
You
sorry,
do.
go ahead.
you're
You do-
individually, so it's a little complicated, but fundamentally what you're doing is you're buying individual panels,
Mhm.
okay, in a shared system. And in fact, one of the directors in Third Mutual said, we need to keep track of who owns which panel. So if there's a liability issue, it's associated with that panel. And so, yes, you're responsible for the liability of those panels. So if one of them blows off and hits somebody and causes an injury or something like that, the liability would be traced back to the owner of that panel.
So each panel will have a little name.
It has
on it?
it has a serial number on it. The
Okay.
serial numbers will be recorded as
Okay.
being associated with you. You need, under the regular solar policy, you need to have a liability insurance. Your general homeowner's umbrella liability insurance covers that. You should probably have that insurance anyway. You probably do. It's usually through your automobile because that's your most likely cause of a large liability claim. And so that's what would pay for that kind of liability.
Yes, that's a
the way-
liability. How about the
Yeah.
casualty insurance? Because is your HO2 policy, which covers the contents of your unit, going to cover something on your roof?
I don't know the answer to that. I
No?
think it would depend on your individual carrier.
No,
And
no.
it probably doesn't. It
No,
probably
no,
doesn't.
because it's part of the structure. Your
Yeah,
homeowner's insurance in a condominium does not cover the structure.
yeah. So it
who
probably
covers it?
is,
On
it
my-
probably is uninsured.
Okay,
Well,
Thank you.
okay, Adrian, on my system, because both Adrian and I have solar systems. I
Mhm.
know my insurance, when I asked them, there was a paragraph there that talked about other items, and they said that would include the solar panels.
would include or exclude?
It included the solar
Okay.
panel, if there was a
Okay.
claim on the solar panels. But I'm sure you have to ask your individual agent whether that type of thing is included or not. And I think by your solar policy, there needs to be some coverage of, well, at least liability. But this was covering other damage to it or that type of thing.
Okay. One last question, if I may.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with the concept of embodied energy? No,
Mm,
I'm seeing blank looks. Okay, so the whole point, and in fact, you've stated this, the real point of doing this is not to save us a few bucks on our electricity, because quite honestly, I think your calculations are way optimistic, but to save the planet
Mhm.
in some manner, or at least make a gesture in that direction. So if, let's say, an individual unit consumes 7,500 kilowatt hours per year, by connecting to this at what is supposed to be 90%, suddenly the theory would be that we're saving 90% of that 7,500. However, that calculation needs to include the environmental cost, the energy cost of producing these panels. Do you have any clue as to how much energy is consumed? Okay, the best estimate that I've been able to find in doing research is about 4,000 kilowatt hours per panel. Or I'm sorry, 4,000 kilowatt hours per kilowatt of generation.
Mhm.
So for instance, when we're talking about a 16 panel, I think on the quote I got was 16 panels. You know, we're looking at somewhere close to 40,000 kilowatt hours just to produce the panels, regardless of the environmental costs involved in installing them, in transporting them. So we all have to understand that this is a good thing incrementally, but it doesn't, even though the panels may last 25 years, we're not getting free electricity for 25 years.
Mhm.
And we're not saving 25 years worth of electricity. Out of 25 years, we may be saving 12. Not a bad thing, but let's be realistic.
Okay.
And I, for myself, all the details of how many pennies I'm going to get back from PG&E or not are kind of less important than the notion of sharing something with all my neighbors and not knowing who's responsible for what and who's going to do what and what happens if.
Mhm.
And I'm not so sure that the solar policy of the mutual is sufficient as an agreement among the neighbors to do that. Now, can you tell me about any other shared systems that have so far been installed in Rossmoor and how they have agreed to these issues?
So Mutual 48 is the pioneer.
Okay.
They started this whole thing back in 2016, and they were the first to install under the tariff, the virtual net energy metering tariff. And the way they do that is one of the residents is appointed as part of the board as to manage their shared solar system. And it's worked reasonably well for that entire time.
So a new owner coming into Mutual 48 is obligated to buy into the shared system? No?
Well, yes, in their case, if they have because it's by unit, yes, they basically are required to, I would think. And so I looked at the way they're doing it, and it's nice, it works, but it does depend on some individuals who have been there and are committed to doing it. So our concern, because we're well, for a variety of reasons, we want to make this more institutional, the management and administration of these shared systems. And so what Sustainable Rossmoor is going to do is figure out sort of a process for doing this and sort of a way of doing it. And if there's some agreements associated with that, we'll get people to sign those agreements. Make it a regular process, make it a regular thing. And then hopefully MOD will pick it up as something that they administer as part of the rest of the administration that they do. But we need to find a way to institutionalize it. We recognize that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But you haven't yet.
We haven't yet.
And you're not likely to between now and next Saturday when you're at the committee.
No. And I'm all about, getting what's on my plate right now, get that done.
Yes.
And we'll do the next.
Understood.
Roger, if the shared aspect of this gives you pause, you do have the option of doing it individually.
Understood.
So that is.
Well, it's not that I don't love my neighbors, Myrna, but you know,
Well, there are advantages and disadvantages to shared.
yeah,
And having to coordinate with other people is one of the disadvantages.
yeah, that's part of
Okay.
living in a condominium.
Right. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, next to Roxanne. Why don't you unmute yourself? And I'm going to go, Roxanne, yeah, we'll let you be next, but why don't we go to Deborah Haken? And why don't you unmute, and then when Roxanne comes back, we'll have her.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't able to be on the first meeting. Maybe that was more people from my mutual. I'm in Fourth Mutual, which I'm not clear is going to change its solar policy. I haven't heard much about that from them. So, if you found out that they're not changing their solar policy at all, I don't have any questions because then I won't be involved. But assuming that they are still considering doing that at Fourth Mutual, is it my understanding that if I put an individual solar in, that it has to be linked up to my own meter, or again, is it going to be linked directly to whatever kind of new box is put in to feed it directly to PG&E? It's just that everything from that gets charged, gets credited back to my own bill. That's question number one. Or does an individual have to get rewired into my house to feed me my own electricity?
So if you do it, an individual installation, they run the wires from the roof, from the panels are installed on your roof. The wires from the panels come down
Got it.
and are run into your meter.
Got it,
behind your
Adrian.
meter.
Adrian, if I do an individual installation and under the new solar stuff that you suggested to the mutual, if they pass it, is there a reason why I can't do it on a carport if it's an individual? Are carports only for shared?
Well, the reason why you can't do it on a carport is more economic than it is anything else,
Got it.
because there's no wires out at the carport. Okay, so you
Got
have
it.
to trench back.
I'd have to trench it in. That'd be, I don't have that savings of having 33 panels on the carport. Second, if, because it wasn't clear in the quote that you gave me, it said that it looked like there were plenty of people in building 2100 that they might have enough to do it. I assume that enough to do it meant on the carport.
No, actually, in that case, and with building 2100 or 2100 Skycrest,
yeah,
the building is situated in such a way that it's got great solar exposure, and there's a slant roof.
right. Yeah, they get a
above.
lot of sun.
Yeah, gets a lot of sun. It's an inexpensive way of installing it, and you have the benefit of doing a shared installation and being able to lock in NEM too.
Okay. So it's my understanding that if it's done on the roof of a building, only the people in that building can share it.
That is correct in mutual authorities.
Now it all makes complete sense to me why I can't do solar. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas in mutual 3, they have allowed people in one building to share on another.
Okay,
building.
but I'm in a small building that only has 4 units.
Yeah.
Therefore, unless the people on building 2100 wanted to use the carport instead, which wouldn't be advantageous to them, I am not really eligible to do this.
Yeah.
My building 2137 sounded though from your thing like maybe you meant that I could put it on my own roof.
You could. Yes.
Put it on my own roof, but
Yeah.
and run it to my own. But then my issue is I think that my mutual, at least a year or two ago, was talking about that anything I do to my own roof, I'm going to be responsible for anything that happens to the entire roof. They've said that if any holes and stuff are cut in there. So I'll have to talk to my mutual. I don't think it's a question for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll go offline and just listen. Thanks.
Right. Very good.
Okay, Roxanne, are you back? And let's go to Nancy Thursby. Nancy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for doing this. This seems to be a huge amount of work that you've done.
You have no idea.
Anyway, my quote says that even though there are 5 out of 10 people in the building that showed some interest, we don't have enough. And I think it's because of our usage. I bet we don't have the 33 panel minimum. So that leaves me just doing an individual situation. And here's a dumb question. I am in the downstairs unit, so the roof isn't mine. I've got my neighbor's floor above me. Not so, but that doesn't matter. It would just be on the roof. We have separate garages, but our electric box is on the side of the building where our homes are, not on the garage. So I assume it would be the roof of the homes. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
people have helped me in the chat telling me our car died, and I automatically said, oh, I want an electric car. And we went down and reserved one, and they're not going to be in until December. And now I think I'm going to need to upgrade my electricity in my garage, or I'm not going to be able to plug it in. But it sounded like from what you said, it would be worth my while to do an individual installation in that case, because I have a golf cart and I have a car, which I'm going to have to
Yeah.
switch off to plug in and not plug in.
So you're just up the street from me, Nancy. I'm in entry 11. So I noticed that there were like 5 or 6 people in your building who were interested. And I don't know, I would have thought that maybe you would have been able to do a shared system, but either way, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I
mean, from what's being said, I almost feel more comfortable with my own if I decide to do it. It just seems simpler, especially with it sounded like it wouldn't help me to do a shared if I have an electric vehicle and nobody else does.
No, it would help you.
Yeah.
Because really what you're doing is whether it's your own system or a shared one, what you're really doing is offsetting the energy that you use for whatever purposes it is, whether it's charging your EV or running your stove. You're offsetting that energy with the solar energy. And the point is, the sun is shining in the middle of the day, so you can't use all that energy. It's generating a huge amount of energy at that point. So what's happening is it's all going out to PG&E. Either way, PG&E is using it elsewhere and then giving it back to you in effect when you need it. And if you're using an electric car, you want to charge it in the middle of the night because the rates are like 18 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And so therefore, having solar is really nice because you're getting paid 30 cents a kilowatt hour for the power you generate at noon, and then you're charging your car at night at 18 cents. So you're getting a hell of a deal.
Can we get batteries? Would it make sense to get our own battery or no?
At this point, you can do it on an individual system, but we looked at doing it, and I eventually said to Carol, my wife, I said, we can just go stay at the presidential suite in the Fairmont for less money than for the likelihood of this.
Okay.
So we ended up choosing not to.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. If Roxanne is not back, let's go to Barbara Bigelow. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Barbara.
Again, like everybody, thank you. I'm very confused though. What I got from Adrian said that they didn't get my estimate because they didn't receive my data, which I sent in immediately after he came to talk to us, number one.
Okay.
And number two, it sounded like from what we heard from him, there were enough people, and I'm in the new mutual 40. And I'm not sure if maybe that's a problem that they haven't agreed. At our meeting, they said they did to change the solar policy to whatever third mutual was. So I thought that was going through. Is that not the case?
No.
So are they the holdup? Is my mutual the holdup? I mean,
Yeah. So at this point, they do not seem to have addressed the issue at all, and so as a result, the only option for you in mutual 40 is to do individual.
If we can get mutual 40 to get on board quickly, I'm not sure that'll happen, but if we could, because we all came on board as a shared,
Yeah.
thinking we could do that. So that is not possible now?
I don't think so. I mean,
Adrian, what do they have to do to change the policy? Or to
well,
accept?
I mean, their board has to agree. So you have to, policy has to be redrafted. Then the board has to agree to that, and it usually goes through governance docs and committee, and then goes to the board. Board has to approve it. And then by law, by David Sterling, if I understand it correctly, well, I see David Kirkpatrick on the call here, who's a lawyer who knows about this stuff. I think they're required to put it out for notice for 28 days. And so it's sort of a 3-month process overall before it's guaranteed to be done. But even so, if the board approves it, then it's probably pretty good, but it seems unlikely that they're going to get to be able to approve it before the end of this month.
There are provisions in Davis Sterling for adopting something that takes effect immediately if in fact you can show that it is a financial benefit to the mutual to do so and that immediate action is necessary.
Oh, okay.
So there is an out.
Okay.
Thank you. I will call. The other thing too is in my building.
Mhm.
There's one other, we're a 4-unit building and 2 of us want solar.
Mhm.
So we could go ahead, but on the individual, like the solar tech, it just looks like if you do 10 panels, there's a big change from 16, almost 17,000 to 18,000. That's not that bad to do the individual, but we wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because it's.
No, you can do the individual. You can absolutely do the individual.
But not get but we don't have a guarantee of getting grandfathered in for this good thing.
No.
Good cost. So.
And you wouldn't either, because the amount of shared would not be large enough to pass the threshold.
Even for the 8 or 10 people that showed interest in our entry 11.
Well, we'd have to have a big enough roof to put it all on. And that
When you came and
really-
talked to us, it sounded like we did have a big enough group.
Okay, well, I'm somehow miscommunicated then, because that's not.
So
So
there's,
you have several potential situations, and there are some, I don't know, mutual 440, the buildings, I don't know, do you have any 8-unit buildings there?
yeah, we have 6. I'm not sure if we have an 8.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
because the 8s do have enough space for to do a 30 kilowatt system. If
'Cause
enough
we
people
have a
were-
6, but I thought that all we had to do was be close together. I mean, suppose we had the 6 and then us across the street.
No,
It's
because otherwise then you'd have to link the systems together. That would involve trenching. That would involve extra cost.
okay.
And so that would drive it, that would make it uneconomical.
I thought the only trenching was if you put it on carports.
Well, it is necessary if you do it on a carport, but if you're trying to link two systems, the point about a shared system is there has to be one generating meter. Okay, one point of connection to PG&E.
Right, and that has to be on one building?
That has to be on one building.
I thought it was something up in the air.
No,
Okay.
not quite.
Okay,
Yeah, and so that, I'm sorry I miscommunicated about that, but the result is that if you were to try and bring 2 or 3 roofs together, you could, but then they'd have to be trenched between them, and that would increase the cost somewhat. And it's questionable whether it's really worth it, given the fact that the individual systems or even a shared within your own system is the economics are close enough that it's not really perhaps worth the extra
So
cost.
if the Beans and I in our building want to do it 2 out of the 4, we
Yeah,
would be doing individuals, but they would still be on one roof. So we
yeah,
couldn't, it's not enough to share.
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay, good.
Okay, why don't we, let's see, let's go with Cheryl Rusick.
It's really not Cheryl, but
Yeah.
Oh, this is her husband, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Yeah. A couple of questions. We all know that MOD they actually own the outer part of the building. They own the roof. At least that's my understanding.
no, the mutual does, not MOD.
Okay, the mutual does. So the mutual is responsible for the roof.
Right.
So the question then becomes, who is responsible for the maintenance of the units?
So the point about this is you are buying these solar units yourself. They are yours.
So
Mutual allows you to place them on the roof of the building. They're required to by law. But you are responsible for the maintenance of those units. If they are destroyed in an earthquake or something like that, that's your loss. It's not the mutual's. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a choice you make to put your property on the roof of the building.
Okay, understood. I just wanted clarity on that. And I assume that goes for all the wiring that goes to and from the unit as well.
That is correct. Yes, all aspects of that. Mhm.
And the other question is there an impact to property taxes on this?
No, there is not. There is
No.
not, Adrian.
All right.
As part of the state of California's interest in doing this, I put in solar, and then I got a notice from the city of Walnut Creek saying we want to reassess. And I called them up and I said, "What's this about?" And he said, well, what improvement did you do to your house? And I said, "Well, I put on solar panels." He said, "Oh, yeah, just forget about it. That was a mistake on our part." They want to encourage solar, and so there's no increase in property taxes as a result of putting solar on.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah.
And this is
Okay.
probably a good time to tag on to what we replied to Jim about, and that is, and as also as we said earlier, one of the things you're going to do if you proceed with solar, you're going to make sure that you've looked at your homeowner's insurance and your umbrella policy insurance to make sure you're covered for the impact of your panels, right? Because it's your property.
Okay. So next is Carol Wong. Can you go ahead?
Yes, I myself have put in a solar system, and I've known 2 people, not in Rossmoor, and I've known 2 people in my project that have put in individual solar systems. And 2 of those 3 have caused leaks in the unit below the solar panels. This has held me up. That, along with the noise of installation, has prevented me from getting solar in the past. And I wonder if you have any discussions with the mutual or other groups in Rossmoor about the disruption that these might cause.
Do you know who the installers were?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's no question that you are working on the roof. You are doing some penetration. There's some of the work involves penetration of the roof, and yes, it could cause a leak. My personal experience has been that we've seen very, very few here at Rossmoor. The installers that we've qualified have both done considerable amount of work here and have had no issues with leaks or other things of that sort. So, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it is a possibility. There is a warranty that they give you on leaks, and the technology that's used to actually attach the panels to the roof is designed in such a way as to limit the possibility, but it does remain. In terms of installation time and disruption, typically on an individual installation, they're in and out in a day.
Oh,
So, I mean, and like my neighbor and I did it, both of us, and it took them a day and a half.
okay.
And it was not particularly noisy. Of course, I live downstairs. Alan might have thought otherwise.
My panels are directly underneath me, and it was not anything I can remember as being a problem. But again, it was just for a day.
I have just one other question, and that's I'm in project 42, Mutual 3. And I understand from communications I've had with some of you that there's absolutely no one in my entry that's interested. Is that your experience?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yes. You're the only
Okay.
one in 42.
Okay,
Congratulations, you're special.
I know.
So you can do individual.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you.
Right. Okay. Oh, Lou, you're back. Now you need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, I have two questions. Number one, I'm assuming that there will be a site visitation and further discussion with the representatives once the contracts are created because I requested a contract for Yes and for Table for
Solar technology.
solar technology. So I'm going to assume they're going to contact me and then we can talk at greater length, correct? And now
Well,
I have one follow-up question on that.
okay, so since we're trying to do this in a sort of a massive way, there's the intent was to try and limit the amount of interaction that was necessary to the sort of minimum. And so I can't speak to their exact process in each case, but the way all of these people operate is that there's excellent software that actually uses satellite imagery of your home, all the trees around it and everything else to actually do all the layout. So they do all of that work remotely. They will probably want to send out a rep to do a site visit, but that's an engineering task where they come and make sure that the electrical is the way they expect it to be and things of that nature. So they will be doing that at some point. But that's, again, as I said, that's more of a technical electrical thing to do, not a talk to the residents, because there's nothing they need from you. And then at that point, at some point through that whole process, they will generate a contract and send it to you. And then, if you want to talk to them about it, then obviously you may do so. But it's not sort of an extensive negotiation type of, or back and forth kind of thing. This whole process becomes fairly automated and fairly process driven.
Okay, the second question is, if you're in a unit where you're going to do individual, what's the process to let the rest of the individuals know you're going to do the solar, or do you need to contact them?
So I'm not absolutely sure about the policy in Mutual 8, but in Mutual 3 and the other ones I've looked at, you are required to notify.
In what fashion?
So typically that means you talk to them and you get them to sign something. However, if you send them a certified letter, then that counts as notification. And so one of the things we were going to do as part of sort of our process to make all of this work more relatively easily, was to actually just generate a set of letters, and then you can and go to people who are signed up and say, here, just stick those in the mail, and you're good to go. We're also, because MOD, part of the process here at Rossmoor. So let me just talk about sort of, let's go from contract to installation. Let's talk about that for just a second, what has to happen. So you sign the contract, you make a deposit of $1,000. At that point, the vendor goes ahead, creates the interconnect application, puts the interconnect application in to PG&E. Okay, that locks in the NEM2 to the maximum extent possible. Then we're going to wait. We're going to wait until the PUC makes their decision. We're not going to do anything because we want to be sure that you do truly get the NEM2. Okay. So that'll happen in the middle of January. After that, then we start going ahead and figuring out, okay, how do we actually install this baby? And so at that point, they have to do detailed engineering drawings. They have to take them down to the city of Walnut Creek, get building permits. They do deal with all of that. The same drawings have to be given to MOD as part of an application. MOD would be just going nuts if all 300 of us show up there on their doorstep waving applications. So we're going to work with them to bundle these together and organize it so that it's not such a drain on their resources, because they just don't have the people, to step up to do this and then not do it again. So we're going to organize all that. As part of that MOD application is when you actually have to notify your neighbors. So what we want to do is organize that so it's all part of that, and it's relatively straightforward, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel 100 times.
What if they reject the
They
letter?
can't.
Okay, it's been adjudicated.
There's a law, AB 634, that says you have to allow your neighbor to install solar on
Thank
the
you.
roof.
Thank you.
But you have to do this notification.
Thank you.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Okay, Richard Coleman.
Yes, I'm back for second round. I think you partly answered my follow-up question to my questions initially, having to do, I think I understand the process, the shared solar, application process, and that's fairly assured of, getting approved for the NEM2 rate. I just wanted to double check on the individual process that if somebody were proceeding individually, they would get some providers, installers to come out and to do a proposal. You would decide on who you wanted to go with, sign a contract with them. The installer then would file the interconnect application with PG&E.
That's correct. In all cases, that's what happens.
Okay. And is there a deadline for that needing to be done?
Yes, that needs to be done in December, and probably more like December 15th.
So probably by the middle of December, that would have to be done. So those, if you were going individually, you'd have to get some people to come out, do the proposals, sign, and them to submit the Internet Connect application. And that, with a little less certainty, should set you up for getting the NEM2 rate with the application.
I want to tag on the answer there. When you're saying individual, I mean, we both Solar Technologies and YES have experience in doing the application, the Part A first before doing the work. When you mention about getting people to come out, getting installers to come out, you as an individual have the option to get other people to come out, but there's no assurance from us that that other than the two that we have vetted, that they have the experience to do to do all this work. I mean, we've had other ones come stand up and say, you can't do this because they've never done it. They've only applied for the interconnect after they've done the install, and they've said what you're doing is not possible. What they meant was that as far as their experience was, you couldn't do that. So yes, you can do anything as an individual, but our recommendation is to stay with these two.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that additional
Right.
comment.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe and Patty Beasley, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, my question is it, if I went downstairs today to my neighbor who isn't signed up and said, would you like to do this? And he said yes and was willing to sign something by Saturday, is it still possible to add somebody, or have we really passed that point?
It is still possible to add somebody, but there is the deadline is for saying, yes, you're in is the 20th.
Okay.
And technically, you don't have to sign anything on Saturday. You just need to let us know that, yes, you are interested enough to proceed to have the installer that you choose by Saturday to put in the work to come up with the engineering design enough to come up with the contract number for you to sign. That's when, and so again, that's why our timing is, you need to let us know by Saturday if you want to proceed. Again, it doesn't commit you to anything, but you need to let us know so that we can get the contractor, the contractors to do your contract. And then that will need to be signed by December 1st.
And let me reiterate, I put that into the provisional quote, but I do want to make it clear that the vendors have done this. They've given us these prices under the assumption that everybody in a building will use the same vendor.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Sure.
Yep.
And it makes sense for you too, because the installation will be uniform. If they had to do it separately, there'll be two big patches of panels.
Yeah.
If it's all together, it'll be one big patch of panels. It'll be one time that they come out and pound around on the roof, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's lots of advantages for you as individuals to do it that way. But I just want to make that, I want to reiterate that and emphasize that we really do require everybody in the building to work together.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for all your work on this.
Right.
You're welcome.
Joe and Patty, if you have somebody who wants to do this, I just put into the chat the emails of Adrian and me. They should send their name. We'll send them out what information we need to get them a quote, but all this has to be turned around pretty quickly. And we'll take people as long as we can, but at some point, we're going to have to cut it off when things are moving forward.
Sure. Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Barbara Bigelow, you have another question?
Thank you. I do. One of the things with one other person in the building. So if I'm correct, we can just go ahead by Saturday, or even me alone if I want to.
Yes.
And have to just let one of you know that I'm interested in doing this.
Yes.
Okay.
And which
vendor?
Well, the other question is, there are two vendors and you've done all this work and we don't know anything. So is there a recommendation between Yes and Shared Solar Tech?
So there's going to, Brad, go ahead.
Yes, take one of them.
Take the cheaper one.
Well, actually, it's cute, but not necessarily true. I have confidence in both those two vendors. And they both have done, as Adrian said earlier, both of them done significant amount of work in Rossmoor. The second one, YES, Your Energy Solutions, is the one that Adrian picked to do his solar installation. And and that he has recommended to other. The other one, Solar Technologies, is the vendor that, Golden Rain Foundation chose to put up the 1 megawatt solar farm at the top of by MOD, and that they chose to do phase 2 solar for them, which is to put panels over the parking lot at Gateway and some of the event center.
Yeah.
Also, Adrian mentioned that Mutual 48 started doing the shared solar program 6 years ago. And they have done all their work with Solar Technologies, who they vetted. And over half of the manners in their mutual have gone with the shared solar program. So I don't think you can go too far wrong with either. Yes, Barry's right. Look at the cost differential.
The cost differential is not that much, about $1,000. So
no,
I'm going to talk to the Beans, and so when I talk to them, how do I say which one? I mean, I don't know.
So
what we're going to do is we're putting together presentations by both vendors for this Tuesday, and by Zoom, and so that you get a chance to kick their tires, virtually, and see if you can see a meaningful reason, to sway your decision one way or another. And so I will be sending out emails with everybody to links to those two presentations.
But I thought you said we need to choose one by Friday or by Saturday.
Right. So Tuesday is 4 days before Saturday, right?
Oh, okay. It's a week from yesterday. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Not yesterday.
No, that would be too hard. Okay. So I'll have them. They did not get, Adrian, the Beans did not get anything from you.
Okay.
So let's see. Do you you can call me later. Do you need a email for them?
I will, but I'll talk to you offline.
Okay, talk to me, because I just talked to her and they're madly busy, but I'll do something today or tomorrow. Okay. And you'll send me the link for Tuesday.
Yeah, everybody will get the link.
Adrian and Brad.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, under the assumption that the contracts are not perfectly identical, you can, and we can select both vendors so that we get the contract, correct?
We prefer that you chose one. And
without looking at the contract, they're not identical.
No, they're not identical, and they're fairly close, but not identical. No two contracts are, right?
yeah. So Brad, is there a way we could make those contracts sort of the base terms available to people?
Let me think about that. I know the one things that I was planning on doing was putting together two different Zoom sessions for tomorrow to specifically talk about contract and the terms of the contracts. And the reason why I need to do two of them is Mutual 1 and 2 only have one vendor to choose from. So they don't need to sit through, discussion, comparing, contrasting the two contracts. And
there is something in the attachment. There are some parts, there's some language in the attachments where we talk about the vendor. When you received your preliminary quote, there was an attachment to it, which had a 14-page document attached to it. And in that, we did compare and contrast the two vendors to some extent. So there's some information there. There is a bit of difference in the
I'm
wording.
interested in the actual language.
Okay.
we know you are a little bit. You got to remember that we're not negotiating the procurement of a freeway, right?
Yeah. but I think we could. But let us think about this, Brad, and see if there's a way we can easily distribute the standard terms and conditions of both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I
to people
can.
who are interested.
Yeah, and just know that we're still doing a little bit of tweaking to them, Lou. And so I will send them out to anybody that asks for them. I mean, we would prefer not to put
Right.
them up on the website because then this explodes the entire world.
Yeah.
Well, I'll sign an NDA.
Well, it's not you we're worried about. It's if we stick it up on a
Brad,
website and say here, then anybody
Okay.
can grab it.
Lou has requested it. Brad said he'll send it out. I think we can
Right.
move
Yep.
on there. If
Right.
if other people want to see the specifics, you can so indicate in the chat. Let's
Okay.
move on to Dave Epley.
AT David.
Yes, David, you can unmute yourself.
There. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about maybe this is going to get us into too nebulous and iffy situation, but a lot of people I suspect are kind of in the same place I am, which is I'm a relatively low user of I have a
Electricity.
small footprint, and it's I think indicated by the fact that whenever I got the attachment quote, they were talking about 6 to 8 panels, and the cover letter was talking about 10 to 12 panels, so which is a big range. And so, and like other people, I may be getting an electric car sometime in the not too distant future, but probably not within a year. So there's a lot of, I think a lot of people are, whenever they get down to the nitty gritty, are going to have to decide, well, how many panels do you want? And the one thing I kind of have figured out that is, if you get too many panels, you're basically generating free electricity for PG&E, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So you don't overdo it. But if you know that you're probably using less than the average bear is using, and that's my inference from the way the two quotes were, or the two amounts were mentioned, you probably don't want to underpower yourself by too much. How big of a deal is it to add another panel or two later on? Is it pretty significantly more expensive than getting it now?
Well, the problem is not mechanically, electronically, it's easy to do.
Right.
Problem is the regulation.
Right.
If you change your system at all, after this, you're out of NEM2.
Oh boy.
PG&E will, as you know, they're not your friend.
Nope.
So yeah, so that's the gotcha.
So is it fair to infer, having no numbers in front of me, that I would be better off getting an extra panel or two, even if I know it's going to cause me to generate more free electricity for PG&E in the short run, given that we're ultimately talking about 20 or 25 years for somebody, probably not me that whole time, but somebody here. So can you comment on the trade-offs there?
I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
You got to remember that there are, three benefits, as I think maybe we mentioned before, three benefits to participating in putting up solar, right? One is the economic benefits. The other is the environmental benefits. And then the third one is the likelihood that it will meaningfully increase the resale value of your manor. And even if you're a low power consumption manor now, no guarantee that if you go to sell your unit in 3 or 5 years, whoever moves in is not a power hog. So it's and so it may be beneficial, but so obviously you got to weigh all the pros and cons. It's not clearly there's not a one size fits all solution, right?
Yeah, and Roger Bass brought up a pretty interesting additional point. I mean, one of the main reasons I want to do this is because I think it's an environmentally responsible thing to do. But then when he talked about the intrinsic energy costs, or all-encompassing energy costs of putting in panels, it's not quite as obvious once you think about that, the cost of getting all these things made and installed. So yeah, it's something everybody should think about, I think, in advance, because when the crunch time comes, you aren't going to have very much time to roll the dice on how many panels.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you, David. John Rosenberg, please ask your
Thank
question.
you. I've got a couple of comments. I found this whole process a little confusing.
Only a little?
We've got 3 different people giving us pieces of information. And I don't feel anybody is giving us all the information. For instance, how many vendors have you talked to? How many vendors submitted quotes? How long was the process of sending out requests for bids? Those are the kind of things. I've been involved in government and quasi-government situations where that's the process. And it sounds to me like this is very similar, but we don't have any of that information. But ultimately, we're the ones who have to make the decisions. And I don't feel confident that I have nearly the necessary information to be able to make a decision.
Hey, John, and given what it sounds like your background is, I can understand why it would cause you, the process would cause you significant trepidation. And this might sound a little hard, but I would say in that case, this might not be a program for you, and you probably would want to pass on it.
Why would you say that if ultimately I want to be part of this?
And because this is the best we could do with the amount of time and we had and the amount of resources we had. Again, remember, these are all volunteers, right?
I understand that.
Right.
But Barry, why don't you go through your process that we used to find these 2 vendors?
So we sent out requests to, I forget, somewhere between 12 and 17 vendors who we've identified as meeting the criteria of having having adequate experience. We had a number of criteria that we went through. We had 3 or 4 that responded, and including the 2 that you've gotten quotes from here as well. Most did not respond to the request for qualifications, and then those that did, we send out what we were looking for. I can share more of that information with you and with others who are asking. Again, put it in the chat, and that might give you a better comfort level. But in point of fact, because of somewhat specialized knowledge on applying for applications these way in the 2-part process, it becomes more specialized. It's harder to find people, to find the installers who can do that, and that was what was necessary to lock in or to grandfather in the NEM2. But I'd be happy to send you the Kepner-Trigo decision analysis that was used on that part of the process.
Barry, that's the second time I've heard that in writing first and then from you now. We don't even know for sure that that's going to be suspended or when it's going to be suspended.
Right,
Isn't
but
that true?
if you wait for certainty, then you lose the window. So you have to deal with uncertainty here.
I mean, we do know that it's going to be
Changed.
NEM2. I mean, the decision, the PUC has a very deliberative, bureaucratic, administrative process. They added this to their docket on September 27th of last year, 2020. I'm on their mailing list. I signed up to be alerted to all of the briefs that come through. I can see every day I get like 2-3 briefs that are arguing for or against or for these changes. This is a process that's going on. They have announced on their website that they are making a decision in the middle of January. This is all public knowledge and available to anybody to observe. So, I mean, the legislation that was written in 2013 actually required them to do this whole thing once a certain threshold was passed, which got passed actually in 2018. So, I mean, all of these threads come together and eventuate in where we are today. And so that's, I mean, there's no uncertainty about this. There's no.
Let me just close my part this way. I've spent 57 years selling. Also spent 13 years in local city government.
Mm-hmm.
You never get anything done right if you don't supply all of the information to the people who have to make the decision and pay the bill.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that those of us here have all the information to be able to pay the bill and know we're doing the right thing. I could speak for myself and say, at 81 years of age, I don't feel I have that information. I feel I have some of it, and I'm getting it piecemeal.
And John, that's probably both true. You don't have all the information. You will never get all the information. And it has come piecemeal partially because we've had multiple of us working on this project. We've had to, because it's a short timeline project, and the answers are coming to us almost hourly. The pieces are. So we're putting this puzzle together as we go. We think this is our best view so far, our best bet. And again, and so as I said earlier, if you need a high degree of certainty, this is probably not the project for you.
Well, what concerns me is if I go with your option, I'm precluded from using an option that I might have chosen. For instance, and then I'll be quiet. I'm a life member of the Alumni Association at Berkeley. Every month when the Cal Monthly comes out, there's an offer for the alumni to use one of their alumni vendors for solar. I don't know whether they have a better offer because I've never contacted, and I'll never know if I don't contact them.
And there's nothing to prevent you from contacting other vendors. You're not required to use ours.
Except Adrian is saying this won't work if we don't all use the same vendor.
No, what I was saying, John, was what we're asking the people who are participating in this. We've offered 2 vendors, Solar Technologies and Yes. And what we're asking is that if the people in a building choose one or the other, and to do that, all the installations in that building, that you and your neighbor agree to use the same vendor. We're not asking that everybody on this call or everybody in the 330 people to use the same vendor. We're just saying that the people who are in your building, would you please agree on that?
I
And
mean,
there's nothing to preclude you from going and choosing your,
yeah, I'm in a
somebody else.
and nobody other than me is interested. And it's the same thing that I experienced 2 years ago.
In that case, you can pick any damn vendor you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was excited about the share idea.
We were too, and still are where it makes sense.
Right. But it,
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Sure, John.
John, you're in Mutual 4. We don't know if we don't have any indication that Mutual 4 is going forward with the revisions needed. So right at this point, individual is your only option and time is running out. You can choose, you can go with these, or you can call one of those alumni vendors or anyone else, but they need to move quickly.
Thank you.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
And Barbara, you're back for the third round?
Oh, yeah, it's just cost. I just want to do it. And I guess if we say go ahead, I haven't heard this. It's like $1,000 deposit.
Yes.
Okay, is that totally refundable or non-refundable?
Yes and no. It's most likely, if you cancel it, it'll be partially refundable. And that's one of the parts that we're still finalizing the negotiation on, because we're trying to get both of the vendors to agree to a reasonable cancellation fee in the event that you cancel because, for example, and the CDP throws us a curve and you don't get grandfathered into NEM2.
Yeah.
We want to be able to cancel, right? And so the cancellation, it looks like, we're circling close to is, the lower of, $500 or the amount of their charges for work they've already done for you, whichever is higher.
That's fine. Okay, that's good. And then the MOD fee of 500, that's when all that happens. It's not right up front.
That's not up front, no.
Okay, that's fine. So we have to they would send us a contract or something and we would pay the deposit, but we would go through you to do that.
You go directly. Actually, yes. You send a check to my bank account, and you can send the contract to Adrian.
Put it on a credit card.
You betcha.
Okay, and how do I do that? Is we have to then choose either yes or Solar Tech?
Yeah.
And we would we contact them after Saturday?
No, we will contact them for you. We will say, here's a list of 120 people who are going with you.
Fine. Okay.
Send them contracts.
Okay.
And
that's why we don't know how many. I mean, I need 8 to 10 panels. So in listening to all this, I probably should go with the 10, even if I'm giving, because I'm a single. A couple could buy this and they would be using more power than I am.
Perhaps, yes.
So yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And the contracts will be emailed to you electronically, so you can sign them electronically and send them back to the contractor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, since we are way past time, I think what we'll commit to is going through the chat questions after this, and Adrian, myself, and 1 or 2 others will help with the answers to that, and we'll send the answers to the individual person. Those that are good general questions, we might post as an FAQ on the website. But Brad or Adrian, could you review what the steps are going to be for the next week that people can expect?
Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, and so again, so I'm we're in the process of organizing Zoom presentations by each of the two vendors separately, for Tuesday. I think, and I'm hoping that one will be that the solar technologies will be, 3:00 on Tuesday afternoon, and the YES presentation will be 7 p.m. Tuesday evening. Again, just like we're doing for this Q&A session, we'll record it and then we'll email out a link to the recording for anybody that can't make it. And then I'm also, I'm going to try to set up the Zoom sessions for tomorrow to look at contract provisions. But anybody that wants to get a hold of the contract for either or both vendors, I hate to say this, but probably should send me an email. Actually, I should have you send it to Barry. No, send it to me. I'll put my email in the, actually, you already have my email because I was the one that sent you out the notice about this meeting. So, but if you don't, it's real simple. It's bradwaite@comcast.net with no punctuation and Brad Waite. And then as Adrian said, and as Barry said, that you'll just need to decide by Saturday and let us know by Saturday if you want to proceed to get a formal contract prepared for you and which vendor you want to get that from. Cynthia, you don't need to unmute yourself, Cynthia.
Can we go down to like 50% of what they're recommending? Is there a limit on how low we can go?
If on a shared system or a
Yeah,
individual.
Well, individual, I'm sure I can go as low as I want, but
yes.
Well, I think, but on a shared system, I guess.
Yeah, there's no reason why you can't go lower.
Yeah, you can go lower. I
The
mean,
price won't be, the cost per panel will go up slightly.
Ah, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
obviously there's the economies of scale. The more panels you put on, you make use of certain of the components like the inverters. So,
but yeah, there's no reason you can't you go with fewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did mention in one of the write-ups that ordering more than you normally would use, the additional you lose on the rate, because
you do.
If you have more capacity than what you use, you don't get the payback the same way.
That's correct.
Right.
It's close to, yeah.
That's true, although the tendency when you get solar is that I know we used to be extremely frugal on the temperature we had the house set at the summer and the winter. And then now we have this free energy, and my wife insisted on making us a little more comfortable. And I couldn't complain because it wasn't costing anything. So the end result is that the check we get back from MCE is smaller than it was the first year because of that tendency. So, and that's not an uncommon occurrence.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if everybody is not confused at this point, then we failed miserably. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for your patience. I hope this was a worthwhile session for the fact that we started with 66 and 41 are still here. That's not too bad. Again, we will endeavor to answer your questions that you generated here. And thank you for attending.
Thank you all for all the work you've done. It's been a tremendous job.
Thank you.
Well, especially Adrian and Barry.
Yeah, thank you so very much.
I'm in awe of what you've done. It's amazing.
Yes.
Just incredible amount of information.
We are.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Now all we have to do is figure out how many panels.
Yeah, right.
And where?
And which,
Okay,
Thanks to all of you.
you're welcome.
thanks for attending. So long.
Thanks.
Bye.